our customers primarily were SaaS software companies. So they spend money they don't have. They raise capital, they spend money they don't have, and they grow these unicorn-like businesses. Well, I started emulating their growth patterns, and I started spending wildly. And I woke up one day at the end of 2017, and I was $1 million in debt personally. So I want to remove those bottlenecks from you so that you can work on the $500 an hour value creation and have more fun in the business.
Jamie Shanks is a 3-time agency founder in the sales and marketing productivity space. The first business is Get Levrg, a sales and marketing outsourcing agency that buys back 5-hour tasks from their customers so they can focus on $500 hour value creation. The second is Pipeline Signals, an account-based sales enablement certification and signal intelligence platform for account executives. The third business is Sales for Life, the pioneers of social selling certifications for the mid-market and global enterprise. Jamie, I'm so excited to have you on this show because this show is very heavy on sales and marketing. So welcome to Prospecting on Purpose.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, and I would love, before we get into, I want to talk a lot today about this concept of outsourcing talent, because I think it's something people conceptually understand, but maybe in practice and implementation, it's a murky space. So that's what I want to focus on. But before we get into that, give me a little bit of your origin story. Like, how did you start these businesses? Why sales and marketing? Give us a little background there.
So I'll go back to, I lived in Australia, did my master's degree there. And when I came home to Toronto, Canada, no one would hire me. And I thought I had a master's degree. I worked at the Bank of Montreal. I must be a hot commodity. Turns out nothing. Well, it took me 11 months to get a job. And when I finally landed something, it was 100% commission commercial real estate job. So my job was to work with tenants to find them office space. And I called into chief executive officers and chief financial officers. And it turns out I had a knack for it. I was really good at cold calling and booking meetings. Customers loved me. I was personable. And I went from 0 to 6 figures at 25, 26 years old. And I clearly had a knack for it. I then went to a SaaS software company and I was employee 3. And we went from 0 to $3 million. It took the company to profitability. And I decided to strike out on my own. And when I struck out on my own, I failed miserably. I was a consultant for hire. My goal was to help people with inside sales best practices. So this was the emergence of the idea of business development being done digitally through email, through cold calling, through obviously eventually LinkedIn. And I got really lucky almost 2 years into my failing consultancy that I was experimenting with this new emerging tool called LinkedIn. And I helped pioneer a category that would be called social selling. And as I created that category, my sales training curriculum naturally gravitated to the global enterprise. So these companies like Microsoft, Oracle, Intel had thousands of sellers that also wanted to learn tools like LinkedIn. And so I kind of jumped the shark, so to speak. I went from this local, small Toronto business to being able to serve Microsoft globally in 5 super centers around the world. And so that was the genesis of getting into being an owner of a professional services firm.
Wow. So let's talk about that for a second, because when you're building something that's new, like how did Microsoft find you or did you find them?
So there's a concept I taught, and I call it, if you've ever seen the movie Back to the Future, Doc Brown slips on the toilet, hits his head on the wall, and he invents the flux capacitor that goes into the back of the DeLorean that helps him time travel. I had one of those moments when I won my very first customer that I taught with social selling. Here's the quick story. Nobody would hire me. I had this idea that LinkedIn would be pervasive to helping with business development because I had been doing it for myself. Play squash every morning with this guy who was the head of customer success at a market research company in Toronto called Vision Critical. He got me a meeting with the chief revenue officer. His name was Mark Bergen. Mark wouldn't pay me to teach his team because I had no experience, but he decided to make a deal with me. If I helped his sales team, which there was an office in Toronto, Vancouver, London, England, and in Australia, if I helped them book sales qualified meetings with LinkedIn, he would give a multi-year agreement to be a reference no matter who called, even if it was his top competitors. I took that deal. I took that deal. We booked 31 sales qualified meetings in 60 days. I think I wrote a blog post about it. And then crickets. I didn't know what to do next. So here's what I did. I grabbed a sheet of paper. I had this moment where I just had this idea. I grabbed a sheet of paper and I drew the logo of Vision Critical. And I circled it and I asked myself a fundamental question. Who cares? And when I stared at this logo over and over again, I had this epiphany and I started drawing spider webs off of that centered circle. And this was the genesis of a concept I called the sphere of influence. And essentially, when you win a net new customer, the only people that care about that case study or story are, as an example, executives that leave that company that go to other businesses, or I dive into the social networks of the very people that exist inside Vision Critical today. Who do they know? And there's a button in LinkedIn that gives you what's called social proximity. You can map the top 3 to 5 accounts that people know. Then their vendors and suppliers, then their competitors. So this spider web of one customer gives you a map of maybe 5 to 10, 20 other customers to target. So here's what happened. Vision Critical won me their competitor, USAMP. USAMP won me a telecom company called XO Communications. XO Communications won me a Tata Communications. Tata Communications won me Thomson Reuters. Thomson Reuters won me Oracle. And that happened in 12 months. So I went from a free deal to a $250,000 5-year deal with Oracle in a year. And then the snowball rolled from there.
Wow. Well, I love that story for many reasons. I love that it started with a game of squash because I feel like that's something people forget. Like you have a really robust network from your social circles too. And I think that's where people forget that they can ask for favors. They can ask for introductions. If you talk about what you're doing, people remember it. So I think that's very cool. I also love that you did it for free. When I was building my business, I've done a lot of pro bono, events and workshops, but in exchange for things, because when you're building, there's other forms of currency. And so you got the client, you got the case study, you got the testimonial. I think that's so cool. And then to land Oracle in 12 months is awesome.
I always advise new entrepreneurs, whether you're in ProServe like myself, running agencies, or you're in SaaS software, do a few deals free. Number one, you're going to iron out some of the kinks, onboarding and beyond. But number two, you will accelerate towards product market fit much faster because people will naturally just say yes. Get 5 or 10 deals under your belt so you can get to product market fit faster. It's not about $0 to $1. It's about how you're going to get from 1 to 10.
Right.
And you will never get beyond 1 if you can't get anything sold.
Yeah, I had someone, I don't remember who, but I give this advice a lot too, where I wouldn't do anything for free. I would still put together, a loose contract, but just, in exchange for this free workshop, my company, Sarah Murray Inc. will sponsor 100% of this in exchange for references, testimonial, etc. So that got me into the habit of talking about money. My fee is X, but for you and this particular event, I'll sponsor it. So it gave me some muscles that I think really helped me early on. And now I'm to a point where another piece of advice that I would get often is hire a virtual assistant, outsource your talent. You need help. You can't do it all yourself. And so that's actually where I found Get Levrg. So I am a client of Jamie's and I've been working with the team probably since like February of 2024. I think it's been like 6 months now. But I'd love to learn a little bit about how did you make the jump to building out Get Levrg and give us a little bit of background on that company.
Well, there is a interesting story to this as well. So imagine now it's the year 2013 and Sales for Life starts taking off. It goes hyperbolic.
And sorry, Jamie, the Sales for Life is the LinkedIn.
The LinkedIn, the social selling.
Got it. Okay.
Number one. So we kind of go, whatever you call it, hyperbolic, parabolic, in the sense that we start winning, we create a sales qualified lead a day of the global enterprise, and we win 600 global customers around the world. It has me training in 45 different countries, and it was crazy. Problem.
Yeah.
So good news is the outside world thinks we're superheroes. We're making every list and we're on the M&A track and people are trying to acquire my company. But I'm also an entrepreneur that's good at one thing. I can win business, but nobody ever taught me how to read a P&L, a profit and loss statement. So our customers primarily were SaaS software companies. So they spend money they don't have. They raise capital, they spend money they don't have, and they grow these unicorn-like businesses. Well, I started emulating their growth patterns and I started spending wildly. And I woke up one day at the end of 2017 and I was $1 million in debt personally. I didn't even know how this is even possible. So I took on some mentors. I tried to sell the business. I tried to raise capital. I had this big panic. But thankfully, I took on some mentors that helped me reframe the act of growing a professional services firm. And essentially, all I ever thought about was the numerator. How do I make more money? But well, what if I saved $1? What does that do? And I'll give you kind of simple math. You're a 20% EBITDA business, 20% profit business. Every dollar that you save is actually $5 you don't need to go sell to earn the same profit. Nobody had ever, that's the most simple concept in the world. Nobody had ever explained it to me.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, let's use that at $1 million. My marketing spend alone was a $1 million marketing team. If I were to trim $1 million from marketing spend, that is $5 million of revenue I don't need to go chase. That is dramatic to a reduction of headwind or giving a tailwind to your sales team. So long and the short is I go on this journey to start reframing my mindset that I was so fixated that everyone had to come to my physical office. We had a beautiful office in downtown Toronto, Canada. Everybody had to come in. And now all of a sudden I was more objective. And every time we needed somebody for a new role, I would ask myself, do they need to live in Toronto? No. Could they live in Toledo? Sure. Could they live in Taipei? And so all of a sudden my mind unlocked, and of course technology had caught up to allowing people to work from anywhere in the world. So I started a journey where in the Philippines, India, Brazil, Serbia, I started acquiring talent. And long of the short is a couple of years ago, I was introduced to my now business partner in Get Levrg, Nazmul. And we started to recognize that the transformation I went through of being $1 million in debt to turning around profit, just in 1 year, I went from the company lost $450,000 actual on a P&L statement to making $600,000 the year after. So like $1 million swing in one fiscal year. And I thought there were so many small to mid-market businesses that are in the exact same scenario. They're resource constrained. They don't have the time, money, or energy to be able to hire here in North America, but they need results. So we created a done-for-you agency called Get Levrg. And we focus only on sales and marketing, my world, Nazmul's world, my other partner, Derek's world. And we help buy back the $5 an hour tasks that are bogging down companies' growth. And we take those over so that they can focus on $500 an hour value creation.
Wow. And then how did you and Nazmul meet?
So very similar where in my, so I ended up starting a second company during COVID. That second company was good, but made some serious mistakes called Pipeline Signals. We invented the idea of monitoring job change alerts on LinkedIn and getting that data in the hands of customers. So I can get into its value proposition, but it was first of its kind and people loved it. But the problem, we were non-technical founders trying to jump into a SaaS software world. We should have just stayed pure agency. But long and the short, it's called got half pregnant, and we were like a tech-enabled service. But long and the short, it needed to grow a scaled marketing team. And we had a marketing team in the Philippines, and they were working but the Philippines has grown dramatically more expensive. So the labor arbitrage wasn't really there anymore.
Mhm.
And one of our teammates who was doing signal monitoring for our customers is actually from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and said, I want you to meet this guy named Nazmul. He's like the king of marketing in Dhaka. Got to meet Nazmul. We ended up scaling a team of 6 marketers in Dhaka inside my company, Pipeline Signals. And that journey began. That's how we met.
Cool. Well, and I've met Nazmul too, and he's a wealth of knowledge, and it's very cool how you both complement each other, because I know you're based in Toronto and does he live in
I'm the
Dublin?
visionary. He's the integrator.
Got it. I love it. Okay, cool. And I think one of the things that, like, I would love to ask you, maybe before we get into some more specifics, give like a basics 101 on like what does a virtual assistant or an offshore talent like do? Like, what's the nutshell version of the story?
Yeah. Nutshell version of the story is they can do any task you can't, shouldn't, and won't. Now, as I mentioned, my silo is sales and marketing, but this could come all the way down to finance. Think of P&L statements, your profit and loss statements, where you have accounts receivables and accounts payables. The simplest way to think about this for your audience is I'd like you to write down everything you did in one day in 2 columns on a sheet of paper. On the left-hand side, it says $5 an hour task. On the right-hand side, it says $500 an hour value creation. And I'll use the act of a sales professional as a perfect litmus test for this example. So in sales, sellers are given the role of, and I'm putting air quotes now, sales. Go get me sales. Well, let's think of what they would need to do today to generate sales in the future. They need to, number 1, build a list of accounts and contacts in a market they want to go after. Number 2, they need to enrich that database, phone numbers, email addresses, LinkedIn accounts. Number 3, they need to build what's called a cadence and a sequence, an orchestration of the stories they're going to tell. Number 4, they need to pick up the phone and run perhaps a call or a demo or a discovery. And so on and so on. We go through this journey all the way through proposal, negotiation, and close. Well, if you separate out the most valuable tasks, those would be demo and discovery and qualification of an opportunity is very skillful. Those that can qualify a deal in and out, where should we spend our time, account segmentation and prioritization. That's a $500 an hour value creation. So is the negotiation of a proposal and building buying committee consensus to close the deal. But all the other things I just described, building a list of accounts, enriching that account, those accounts, getting it into CRM, loading up copy to do an email campaign, pressing play on the email campaign, none of which is a real value creator.
Yeah.
It is a task that generates output for a seller, but it's not value creation. And so you remove those things. So to your audience, if you're a founder and in a day you caught yourself trying to collect accounts receivables, or you were asked to pay somebody an accounts payable, or you needed to think of all of those things that are bogging you down, there are others in the world that would happily take that off your plate for a fraction of what you think somebody would naturally want to be paid, specifically here in North America, to do so.
Okay, that was a great breakdown, because I obviously I've been using the company as a business owner, but I think about when I was a salesperson working in corporate, there were so many things that just I wish I had known. Oh my gosh, yeah. Like Salesforce killed me all the time. Ordering samples, tracking samples, customer, like just it was the bog down of the minutia when that wasn't my strength. And it's like, oh, had I had knowledge that this was a resource to me, and I, obviously I'd have to make sure the company was okay with it, but I just think I would have even performed more than I could have.
Gartner's done a measurement of the average seller. I am a big proponent of this. So sales quota, which is the percentage of sellers that have been making their sales quota, has been diminishing for 10, 15 years. It's been moving in the wrong direction. Now, we used to look at it, maybe it's a breakdown of their skills and like their soft skills and capabilities. Maybe they don't have the right tech and technology. I'm now 45 years old, and I've been training helping founders sell and sellers sell my whole life. And what I'm recognizing is that it's actually a time management problem. Gartner finally did studies around this. And in an average week, a seller spends half of a day to 3/4 and almost one day. It's like all day Friday on administrivia. To your point, getting things in HubSpot or Salesforce, moving things around, building lists, building reports, none of that is helping your customer. It's just busy work. That's the part
For
you take
people
off.
to have visibility on the pipeline and what you're
Exactly.
doing, and so the teams can brag about each other. Yeah, it was painful. And I lived in Los Angeles too. I'd be driving all day, meetings all day, and you get home. I'm like, how do people have children? I'm so exhausted, and I still have to work all night. Like, it was tough. And I think even in now building my business, that's something that's, mentorship given, like outsource these things, outsource these things. And it's like, how do you do that? I think the average person doesn't know how. Oh, let me just call up the Philippines and get somebody to help me. Let me just call it Bangladesh. Like, it's not so black and white and easy. And so I actually took courses to figure out how to post, on the online job boards and find someone. But when I found you, I was referred to you. And when I found Get Levrg, what I really liked about it is I jotted down, I think you made me, I jotted down all of the tasks that I do and where the skills fit, because I think dream scenario is you find someone who can do all of these different things, but that's not reality. Nobody's a Swiss Army knife. So what I really liked about Get Levrg is you have a point person, but if that point person doesn't know how to do something, you have experts in all these different spaces. So can you talk a little bit more about like the business model and kind of what is the team structure?
So let's think about your optionality as an owner for talent acquisition, because here are your options. And I've gone through the whole gauntlet. Step number one, your first instinct is you have a bottleneck. You need a spreadsheet turned into a pivot table. Okay, that was my very first thing I needed solved. And you go to a place like Upwork or Fiverr because you need somebody to give task, do task. Great. So that becomes a great place for single use projects. Its challenge is you can't then employ somebody long term to be able to do that. And then it's not scalable. It's very cost prohibitive at scale. So then you move down to a model, and Sarah, this is where you got into, and you can basically two choices. You can do the fractional talent where you use an agency to give you a half-time equivalent or a full-time equivalent, and they are, say, your dedicated teammate. Now, its advantage is it's a natural employment. They are your teammate. But then you succumb to the ebbs and flows of a human being. Some human beings are great at showing up on time. Some human beings, they don't show up at all and they don't call you for a week, or they get sick, or the electricity goes out, or something happens, and you are beholden to the skill of that individual person or their capacity. We've decided, we started Get Levrg that way a little bit, but we soon recognized that that model is great for the global enterprise and global mid-market. There are already firms that do that well. They sell half-time and full-time equivalents. The model that works really well for micro SMB, SMB, and lower mid-market is essentially a deliverables or outcome-based model that looks like a triangle. The way that it works is you have a single point of contact as a project manager. That project manager becomes the best friend of the founder or your internal teammates. They are responsible for keeping things on time, on budget. They manage the Trello board, Monday.com, whatever is your project management board. But underneath them is an army of talent in sales and marketing. And depending on the project you need a website change. Well, let's give it to the website person. You need a newsletter launched, give it to the copywriter. You need videos edited, you give it to the video editor. And so we're a team of 34, soon to be like literally a team of hundreds. And what we're building is incredible project managers who are customer facing, that take and ingest as much as they can from the customer. And then we split the work across an army of teammates. And what we're responsible for is a deliverable at a specific date and time. So it's very results and outcome based. You said you needed it done by Friday. it's done by Friday.
Mhm.
You don't have to deal with the human dynamics that Sally or Susie didn't come into the office that day. That's our model that we're building and scaling.
Well, I like it because we'll have meetings where I'll have an idea on something I want to execute. And then it's like, oh, let's pull in the automation boss. He's going to help us here. Or let's pull in so-and-so. She's going to help build this landing page. So it's been really cool to see it real time. And one of the other things that I think is interesting is I truly feel like I have a team that I'm working with. So I want to give a shout out to Safa and Adiba. They're my teammates that have been, supporting me in the business growth. But I think I'd like to learn a little bit about the dynamic between building out the team from like a founder perspective. How does that work? How are you seeing that kind of percolate now that you've been doing it for a while?
So if you were to look at me as a founder, and if you almost did like disc analysis or Myers-Briggs, and you looked at things that I'm great at and things that I am not, there are two that I would instantly put in the needs improvement pile. Number one was financial acumen. I think you got that from my first story. And the second was human resources or human dynamics. I My wife is a president of an ad agency, as an example, an experiential marketing agency. So we're both in the agency world. And in her office, it's all ping pong tables and beanbag chairs. And I just, I grew up a farm kid. Like I literally can just plow roads longer and harder than the average bear. And so because of that, I don't need the frills. I don't need any of that. And I struggle to understand why others do. I am learning as a founder that I am a minority, and the majority of the world needs culture, atmosphere, and so forth. So, in our first hire in Get Levrg actually was not anybody that had deliverables or outcomes. It's her, and I don't know if you've ever met her. Her name's Aisha. She's head of recruiting and HR. So talent acquisition, we now have two teammates in talent acquisition, a team of 34. We're probably going to be hiring a few more very shortly. Actually, HR and talent acquisition, for the first time ever, I finally see it's actually connected and equal to sales.
Mm-hmm.
So our sales team, the sales velocity of all the deals coming through, has weekly syncs with HR and talent. And think of customer churn the same with employee churn. Talent retention, we're monitoring voluntary versus non-voluntary attrition. We do ENPS. We are doing all these initiatives. Like we now, as an example, our teammates in Bangladesh have their own vacations, so Eid and all the Islamic holidays, alongside of all the Canadian and American holidays. So we want to become an employee of choice in Bangladesh, where people are like, they give these incredible double vacations that nobody else does. So I know I kind of went on a tangent there, but I naturally don't think of this. And so I needed my partner, Nazmul, who is truly a delivery operations specialist and thinks about the human dynamics in the office. We are really over-indexed on HR. We are actually going to build an internal university, a center of excellence, where we're going to train talent for free, like a university, on all the tasks and capabilities that we have. So HubSpot certified, Salesforce certified, how to make videos, how to write newsletters. We're actually going to build this huge talent pool and let them sit on a bench or two for a month or two, and then pick from our talent pool that we've pre-trained before they start. These aren't things that I think of naturally. So I just wanted to be open and honest.
No, that's so cool.
I needed the yang to my yang in that partnership.
Well, it's funny because the guest who's going to be airing right before your episode is a director of talent acquisition at a global company. And we talked about the team as basically another revenue stream. Like think of it as another sales channel. And I think about like where I feel such loyalty to Safa and Adiba is because they have my back. We are like a true team. I think that it's fun to have teammates in Bangladesh because we make each other laugh a lot. Like the
Seen
other
her
day,
new haircut? You seen her new hair? Have you?
oh no, I haven't. I have
Oh, you
to.
haven't seen it?
We
She's
have
got
a
new
meeting
hair.
next week, and
Yeah.
and I know Adiba's probably by the time this episode airs, she's gonna be out for her wedding. So we wish you, very happy nuptials. But one of the things that's just so funny is we just make each other laugh. The other day I was saying, just scooch this up a little bit, like on a web page. I'm like, just scooch this, and
You
Adiba's
didn't know
like,
what scooch means.
so now we know what the word scooch is, but we teach each other stuff, and it's been really fun. I would like to get some best practices from you on if somebody's thinking about outsourcing talent, what are some of like the mindset shifts? Because I know for me, you think about like, oh, I'm the only one who can do this, or I have the vision, or I'm the one that's stuck to the customer. So how can people kind of overcome some of those mindset shifts when they're going through this transition?
That's a great, and I'm so glad that you said mindset shift. So when I launched Get Levrg, I actually created a course, and we still train customers on offshoring best practices. And the first module is called mindset because it all begins there. Let's actually break it down. There's really the outcome you're trying to drive towards is you have to be able to defend your why you're doing this to stakeholders. Those stakeholders are going to be internal employees who are going to question your decisions. Mm-hmm. They're going to be customers, prospects, vendors, and so forth, maybe your own investors. So you have to think backwards from the fact that you're going to be questioned on this. Now, you probably want two answers. There'll be a qualitative answer and a quantitative answer. The quantitative answer is really obvious. You're most likely doing this because of the labor arbitrage. But you have to be able to game theory out what are you going to do with those new retained earnings, as an example. That's the reason you're doing this, is you're doing this because it creates financial optionality. And that optionality allows you to redeploy those profits to launch a new product, buy a second company, maybe finally normalize your salary so your family can live happy and healthy. Maybe you are trying to build up retained earnings to insulate for a future recession. So you have to be able to look people in the eyes and say, I'm doing this financially because it's the best thing for the corporation. One of the best things that was ever told to me is that a corporation, the entity, Get Levrg Inc. Incorporated, is that an Inc. is a living, breathing organism. And if it could think and talk for you, it has an opinion, and its opinion is to grow and grow financially responsibly. And so it would not care that you have teammates in Toronto or Toledo or Taipei. It just wants great talent for great output. And so it justifiably would absolutely thumbs up the idea of, you mean we're going to get somebody to do social media management for 1/5 the price? Your corporation would scream yes. So that's the quantitative. The qualitative, and the best way to sell this internally, at least this is what I told myself to justify it, is your existing onshore teammates. This isn't about role replacement unless there was a vacancy in the role. I have never fired somebody in North America to then rehire offshore. This has been where there's a capacity gap or a bottleneck, or somebody left a role and now we needed to fill it. But what I tell the onshore teammates is that my biggest concern is the retention of you as talent. You got hired and you probably all had these big dreams of working on these strategic initiatives and projects, but life got in the way. We don't have the resources, so I threw like 17 things at you. And now you're stuck doing all these tasks you hate, and I can see that you hate it. And inevitably, it's going to clip your wings and you're going to leave my business, because you're going to look for greater pastures. So I want to remove those bottlenecks from you so that you can work on the $500 an hour value creation and have more fun in the business. So you have to have that story.
I love that. And there's a couple of companies and business owners that I follow, and every single person on the team has their own virtual assistant. And that's something that the owner chooses to give to them because they see the pain of the tasks that they don't want to do, or that bog you down from strategic thinking and bigger projects and more fun, creative projects. And I think that you can still do those with your teammates overseas. And I think that it just makes it more fun, more enjoyable. There's someone to share in with the results. So I think it's really fun. I think it's very clever and brilliant the way you have the company structured. Is there, before we wrap up, is there any other thing I didn't ask that you would want to make sure that we leave the audience with?
No, I think that what's important for anybody that has not gone from 0 to 1 or 1 to many with offshore talent is really look yourself in the mirror and ask, are you happy with your current situation, whether it's financially or you might have talent retention issues onshore? There are ways to solve this. And to your point, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of small to medium business owners that have now successfully scaled, in our case, sales and marketing talent, to be able to do things in go-to-market that they frankly had not been able to do before.
Right. Okay. I love that. And I like the idea of just self-reflection and kind of the idea of what would the Inc. want? What would the company want? Because I've never thought about it from that angle. And I think that it does give us a helpful framework on decision making, because everything you say yes to, you say no to something else. You want to make sure you're saying yes to the right things. And for me, I see where my personal bandwidth is and where my business is going and how much busy is coming my way, which is a beautiful problem. But I feel so grateful that I have the infrastructure of the team so that when busy hits, I'm not hating my business. It's still enjoyable and I still have support. So I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank you for your mentorship. Thank you to Nazmo as well. Like, you've been a really nice partner, and I see why you're successful in sales. It's a pleasure to work together.
Thank you so much.